My name is Madison Cole. I'm 18 years old, and the brakes my father fixed nearly turned me into a smear under a delivery truck. One second, I was pedaling through the roundabout sweat in my eyes. The next, I was skidding sideways metal, grinding my knee, splitting open on the asphalt. I smelled burnt rubber and my own blood in the same breath. When I stumbled home, grease streaked up my arm. I looked like I'd wrestled a machine and lost. My mother only smiled too wide. My father folded his paper and asked if I'd reported it. Not if I was okay, not if I could still walk, but what they didn't know was I had already set a camera in the garage. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. I want to know which city, which country, because stories like this don't just happen in small towns like mine. And if you've ever felt betrayed by the very people who were supposed to protect you, hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe because sharing these stories isn't just about revenge, it's about survival. I didn't grow up in a house full of screaming. No slamming doors, no broken plates. That almost made it worse. My parents' cruelty was quieter, sharper, like a steady drip from a leaky faucet you can't fix. It wore me down in silence. I can still see the kitchen of our old house, the yellowing linoleum floor, the fridge humming like it was gasping for breath, the smell of fried onions that clung to every curtain. I was 12 elbows on the table waiting for dinner. Samantha, my older sister, walked in, and Mom's whole face lit up like someone had switched on a lamp. She set the biggest chicken leg on Samantha's plate, scooped out the freshest peas, the fluffiest mash. My plate was a pile of scraps, the skin pulled off the peas, already turning gray. Nobody said it out loud, but the hierarchy was set. "Eat up, Maddie," Mom said, distracted eyes on Samantha's smile. I chewed quietly. I learned early that complaining got me nowhere. The lesson was simple. Samantha was the star, I was the backdrop. One Christmas, the imbalance turned into a punchline. The tree twinkled with cheap lights. The living room smelled like pine and dust. Samantha tore open a box with a brand new violin inside polished wood, gleaming strings tight as secrets. I opened mine, a pair of discount sneakers 2 sizes too big. Dad chuckled like it was funny. "You'll grow into them." Samantha got lessons applause at every family gathering. I got blisters. At school, it wasn't much better. I remember winning a science fair when I was 15. First prize ribbon tiny trophy, the kind that felt huge to me. I came home clutching it like treasure. Mom barely looked up from the sink. Dad muttered, "Of course you did. You're the responsible one." Samantha wandered in, waving her report card with a B in English, and suddenly there was clapping, literal clapping, in our cramped kitchen. I stood there with my ribbon invisible. I didn't know it then, but moments like that were carving something deep inside me. The worst blow came the summer I got my acceptance letter to college. I held the envelope like it was glowing, heart-pounding as I tore it open. "Congratulations," it said, my future finally written in ink. I imagined dorm rooms, lectures, friends who didn't know me as second best. But that night the kitchen was too quiet. Dad cleared his throat the way he always did before he said something I wouldn't like. The faucet dripped in the background, steady, relentless. "We can't afford both," he said flatly. "Both?" I asked. Mom wiped her hands on a dish towel, not meeting my eyes. "Your sister's baby. The wedding, the house. She needs us right now. College will still be there next year." The words felt like a blade sliding under my ribs. "So I have to wait," my voice cracked. "You're strong," Dad said, as if that was some kind of prize. "You'll manage." Manage. That was the word they always used when they meant sacrifice. That night, I sat on my bed staring at the acceptance letter. My ceiling had a crack shaped like a crooked river. I traced it with my eyes until tears blurred it. I wrote the email the next morning, defer 1 year. My chest caved in as I hit send. That year off became a job. A delivery company, a uniform that smelled like cardboard, and sweat a company bike with brakes that squealed louder than I ever did. Every paycheck went into the family pot. Rent savings, Samantha's wedding fund. I was 17 pedaling miles every day and somehow still the family's invisible mule. There was one dinner I'll never forget. Cheap spaghetti overcooked and sticking together. Dad leaned back in his chair, fork dangling. "Did you hear about that guy in the next town, delivery rider? Fell off his work bike, broke his arm. Company had to pay him 6 figures. Mom laughed like it was the punchline of a great joke. Can you imagine just one broken arm? Samantha giggled, twirling pasta around her fork belly round under her sweatshirt. I forced a laugh, but it stuck in my throat. There was a flicker in my parents' eyes, a spark that made my stomach twist. It wasn't just dinner chatter. It was hope. Their hope. I didn't know it back then, but that story would come back to haunt me. The first time Dad crouched by my bike tools in hand, he said it like a gift. Brakes felt spongy, just keeping you safe. His nails were black with grease, his shirt smelled like oil. The garage light buzzed overhead. I didn't think twice. Parents fix things right. But later that week, when my brakes squealed and the bike slid through an intersection, my knee slammed the pavement. I limped home, jeans ripped blood seeping through. Mom's smile was too quick, too rehearsed. Are you hurt? Any bones broken? She looked at me like I was paperwork. Dad folded his paper carefully like origami. Did you report it, report? I croaked. No. I'm fine. They shared a look. Disappointment, not relief. I swallowed it down, but that moment carved deeper than I realized. By late fall, the pattern had become a rhythm I couldn't escape. Work, hand over the paycheck, swallow the silence. Every Friday, I'd bike home with my tips stuffed in an envelope only to watch Dad slide it into a drawer labeled wedding fund. My stomach knotted tighter each time. Sometimes I'd crack jokes to my friends at work. Guess I'm paying for my sister's honeymoon. They'd laugh, slap my shoulder, but my chest felt heavy like I was hauling bricks instead of envelopes. Winter made things worse. The cold cut through my delivery jacket, the roads slick with ice. I still remember the night a city bus skidded too close. I heard the roar of its engine, saw headlights blur in the rain, and my bike wobbled like a toy. For a split second, I tasted metal in my mouth. My heart didn't settle for hours. When I limped home, shoes soaked, Mom asked the same question she always did. Any bones broken? Her eyes scanned me like a doctor ticking boxes, but her voice carried no warmth. Dad only muttered, "Maybe next time you should file a report." I wanted to scream, but all that came out was silence. The silence carried me through Christmas. Samantha got a new winter coat with fur trim. Tyler slipped a necklace around her neck, the cheap silver catching the light, and everyone cooed. My gift was a sweater 2 sizes too small, itchy wool that burned my skin. I smiled anyway. That was my role. The responsible one. I didn't know it then, but every smile I faked was a stitch holding me in place, threads my parents would tug on later. Spring brought another so-called accident. I was cutting through the roundabout when my brakes gave out completely. The bike lurched, the world tilted, and I scraped across the pavement. My palms burned gravel lodged in my skin. A truck blasted its horn so close, the wind of it spun me sideways. When I stumbled through the front door, jeans-torn grease streaking my arms, I thought maybe this time they'd panic. But Dad only folded his paper. Mom only poured me water. "Sometimes you don't feel it right away," she said softly. It wasn't care. It was calculation. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my hands wrapped in bandages. Dad leaned back, voice casual. "Remember that guy who got 6 figures? Wild, huh?" Mom's laugh was sharp, too sharp. "Some people are just lucky." The spark in their eyes made me want to vomit. I lay awake staring at the ceiling crack again, tracing it with my eyes. I told myself it was just bad luck. But the memory of Dad's hands on the brake cable replayed like a broken tape click tug loosen. One afternoon, I wheeled my bike into the garage and noticed something new. A thin slice across the rubber of my back tire. It wasn't wear and tear. It was a cut deliberate, the kind you make with a blade. My stomach dropped. I crouched, fingers trembling, and touched the slit. The rubber parted like a wound. I pulled back, skin crawling. That was the moment I stopped pretending. The next week, Dad offered to check the bike again. His voice carried fake concern. "Might need another adjustment." My toast turned to dust in my mouth. I forced a smile. "Sure. Thanks, Dad." But inside, a plan was forming. I walked to the electronics shop on Main Street the following day. The place smelled like dust and plastic. A neon sign buzzed overhead. The man behind the counter raised an eyebrow when I asked for a hidden camera. My voice shook, but I got the words out. "How long does it record?" I asked. "Depends on the battery." He shrugged. "Long enough," I whispered. He didn't ask more questions. Maybe he thought I was catching a cheating boyfriend. I almost wished that was true. That night, I slipped into the garage while the TV blared in the living room. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the device. I wedged the camera behind a row of paint cans angled at the bike stand where Dad always crouched. The lens glowed faintly before it vanished into shadow. I pressed my palms against my knees, breath ragged. My heart was pounding so loud I thought Mom would hear it through the floorboards. Then I went inside, sat at the dinner table, and pretended to care about whatever sitcom laugh track echoed from the TV. I didn't know it then, but I'd just armed myself with the only weapon my parents couldn't twist a recording of the truth. The following morning, I put on my delivery uniform, slung my bag over my shoulder, and wheeled the bike out with my brightest fake smile. "Be careful out there," Dad said, voice too light. The words landed like stones in my stomach. I pushed the bike down the street, turned the corner, and hid it behind the library dumpster. Not glamorous, but safe. Then I sat on a bench, scrolling my phone, pretending to laugh at memes while my insides twisted like wires. Hours dragged. I wandered through the park, bought a coffee. I didn't taste flipped through books I didn't read. My body was in town, but my mind was locked on the garage on that buzzing light on the whine of Dad's tools. When I finally walked home, the house smelled of fried onions again. Mom was humming at the sink. Dad wasn't in sight. "Back early," she asked. "Short shift," I lied. I went upstairs, dumped my bag, then crept back down when the sitcom laugh track started. My heart thudded with each squeak of the floorboards. In the garage, the air was heavy with oil. My bike leaned innocently against the stand. I crouched, pulled the camera free, and shoved it under my sweater. Upstairs, behind my locked bedroom door, I plugged it into my laptop. The file blinked open, and there it was. Dad crouched by my bike tools clinking, his back to the camera. He loosened the brake, pulled adjusted again and again. Then Mom appeared in the doorway. Her voice was a whisper, but clear. Not too much, just enough for a clean break. I slammed the laptop shut, chest heaving. My parents weren't protecting me. They were gambling with my body. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling crack. It no longer looked like a river. It looked like a scar. The video changed everything. Proof sat glowing on my laptop screen, but proof is a dangerous thing when you still live under the same roof as the people you're exposing. Every smile at breakfast, every goodnight honey turned into something hollow, something sharp-edged. The next morning, Dad slid into his chair like nothing had happened. His coffee steamed. His spoon tapped the mug like a metronome. "Brakes felt off yesterday," he said casually. "I'll take another look later." My toast turned to ash in my mouth. "They're fine," I muttered. He looked up, eyes narrowing, then smirked. "Don't get cocky, Madison. Safety first." Mom's laugh chimed in light as glass. "He just wants you in one piece." One piece. My skin prickled. I knew better now. That day at work, I couldn't focus. Packages blurred and my vision addresses slipped from my memory. A coworker named Jess noticed me zoning out. "You okay, Cole?" she asked, pushing a strand of hair out of her face. "Fine." I lied, the word tasting bitter. She shrugged, handed me a water bottle. "Just don't push too hard. No job's worth wrecking yourself." I almost laughed. If only she knew. At home, my paycheck vanished into the same drawer. Dad didn't even thank me. He muttered, "Samantha needs stability." Samantha waddled into the kitchen belly, first giggling as Tyler rubbed her back. "We're so lucky," she said, eyes glowing. Lucky? My chest tightened. I started noticing more. Little things. The way Dad lingered by the garage even when there was no reason. The way Mom's voice always turned softer when she said, "Think carefully, Maddie. Your wrist, your back, you might not feel it yet." She wasn't comforting me. She was rehearsing an insurance claim. One night, I caught Dad with a knife in hand, crouched by the back tire. He jolted when he saw me in the doorway. "Just trimming loose rubber," he said, voice too quick. The blade glinted under the garage light. "Sure," I said, forcing my voice flat. My hands shook until I curled them into fists. Another dinner turned sour. Dad leaned back, smirk tugging at his mouth. Company won't know what hit them. One payout could set us straight. I dropped my fork. What if it's more than that? What if it's not just a broken arm? Mom's eyes flicked to his, then back to me. Don't be dramatic. You don't know that I snapped, heat rising in my chest. Dad's smirk flattened into a glare. Watch your tone. The silence that followed was suffocating. Samantha shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Tyler kept chewing, eyes fixed on his plate. That night, my voicemail lit up with messages from Mom. Her voice syrupy sweet. You don't understand how much we're trying to do for you. For me. The words twisted like knives. The pressure didn't stop. Every conversation turned into an interrogation. Did you fall? Did you bruise? Did anyone at work see it wasn't love? It was evidence collection. One evening, after another long shift, I found my bike propped against the radiator in the hallway, the handlebars turned oddly like it had been moved. My heart thudded. I checked the brakes, the tires, my hands trembling. I didn't even trust touching it anymore. When I looked up, Mom was standing at the top of the stairs, arms folded, smile tight. Checking again, she asked. My throat went dry. Just making sure. Her smile didn't waver. Smart girl. Careful girls don't end up in hospitals. Her words echoed down the hall long after she walked away. That was the escalation. They weren't hiding it anymore. They wanted me scared, cornered. And I was. But I also knew something they didn't. The camera had captured everything. I didn't realize it yet, but the more they pushed, the more they tightened the noose around their own necks. The nights stretched longer after that. I'd lie awake, listening to the house creak, wondering if Dad was downstairs with his toolbox again, or if Mom was whispering strategies over the hum of the refrigerator. Sleep felt dangerous. Dreams weren't safe either. They all ended with screeching brakes and headlights swallowing me whole. One Saturday morning, Samantha decided to host what she called a family breakfast. She set the table with cheap orange juice and pancakes slightly burnt on the edges. For a moment, I thought maybe she was reaching out. But halfway through, Mom leaned across the table, her voice sugar-sweet. So, Maddie, when you fell last week, you didn't go to urgent care. My fork froze. Syrup dripped onto the plate. No, I said carefully. Her smile didn't falter. You really should think about it. Sometimes injuries don't show until later. A doctor's note could help. Help who I asked flatly. Dad set down his coffee mug hard enough to rattle the silverware. Don't play dumb. You're not a child. Tyler cleared his throat, eyes darting between us. Samantha smacked his arm, whispering something I couldn't hear. For once, she looked uneasy, as if a shadow of doubt had reached her. That night, I checked my bike again. My hands brushed over every cable, every bolt. My fingers found fresh grease smeared on the brake lever. I hadn't ridden it since hiding it. My stomach churned. I whispered to myself, they're still at it, even when it's parked. The paranoia bled into everything. Walking home from shifts, I flinched at every car horn. Passing the garage, I imagined the hiss of tires deflating, my parents' voices layered over it all, repeating the same poisoned words. Careful report, lucky bones. Then came the confrontation I couldn't forget. I walked into the kitchen to grab a glass of water. Dad was already there, crouched low, polishing one of his wrenches with a rag. The smell of oil filled the air. He didn't look up when he spoke. You're not grateful, Madison. Do you know what one payout could do for this family? My hand tightened on the glass. Do you know what a broken spine could do to me? He finally met my eyes. Cold, steady. Better one broken bone than a lifetime of scraping by. Mom entered, sliding a plate onto the counter. He's right. We all sacrifice. Why should you be different? I almost dropped the glass. Because it's my body, not yours. Not Samantha's. Mine. The silence after that was a canyon. Even the refrigerator seemed to stop humming. Dad straightened, shoved the wrench back into his toolbox, and snapped it shut. Watch how you talk to us. This house isn't free. My hands shook, but I forced myself to stare back. Neither am I. I walked out before they could answer, my heart hammering like a drumline. The walls of that house were suffocating me. Every photo on the wall family vacations birthdays looked like a lie, a scrapbook of illusions. By then, Samantha had started noticing too. I caught her staring at my bandaged knees, her fork hovering midair. She'd laugh at Dad's jokes, but her eyes flickered toward me, uncertain, almost guilty. I wondered if she suspected or if she just didn't want to know. The pressure peaked a week later. Dad slammed his palm on the dinner table, sending silverware clattering. "We can't keep wasting chances." "One accident, Madison. That's all it takes. One." Mom leaned in, voice sharp. "If you cared about this family, you'd understand." Samantha flinched. Tyler whispered enough, but no one listened. I stared at them across the table, my parents plotting my injury like it was a business deal, my sister silent, my future on the line. And in that moment, the fear drained out of me, replaced by something colder. They thought I was still their mule, their obedient backdrop. They had no idea I'd already armed myself with evidence that could shatter everything. I didn't know it then, but the next step would push us all past the point of no return. The day I finally carried the camera footage to the police station, the air felt heavier, like even the sky knew I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. The building reeked of burnt coffee and damp carpet. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, too white, too sterile. A desk sergeant glanced up. "Can I help you?" My voice shook but didn't break. "I need to report my parents." His brows rose. "For what? For trying to sabotage my bike, to make me crash." I have proof." That got his attention. Minutes later, I was in a small interview room, plastic chairs, squeaking walls, a dull gray. A detective with tired eyes plugged in my flash drive. The footage filled the screen, my dad crouched over my bike tools, clinking his hands, tugging at the brake cable. Then, Mom's voice low and unmistakable. "Not too much. Just enough for a clean break." The detective froze. The video leaned back. His posture changed from bored to sharp. "You did the right thing coming here." I wanted relief, but all I felt was hollow. Because "we'll handle it" didn't make me safe. They didn't send me home that night. Instead, they called Aunt Margaret. She swept into the station smelling of peppermint tea, eyes blazing. She pulled me into her arms, held me tighter than anyone had in years. "You're staying with me?" She said, no room for argument. Her house was small, mismatched sheets on the spare bed, a faded kitten poster still taped to the wall from when her daughter was little, but it felt like sanctuary. For the first time in months, I slept without my bike, leaning against the hallway radiator like a listening sentinel. But safety was temporary. My phone lit up nonstop, missed calls, voicemails, texts from Mom, from Dad. I ignored them, but one voicemail slipped through. Mom's voice sharp with anger. "How could you? You don't know what you've done." I hurled the phone onto the pillow, my pulse hammering. The police arrested them 2 days later. Reckless endangerment, child cruelty, conspiracy to commit fraud. But arrests weren't endings. They were pauses. Paperwork. Bail. My parents came home the same night. That evening, Aunt Margaret's phone rang. She frowned, whispered sharp words, then poked her head into my room. "They want to talk to you." Video call. Every nerve screamed no, but another part of me, the part craving answers, nodded. We set up the laptop on her kitchen table. Margaret hovered, close arms folded. The screen flickered to life, and there they were. My parents. Not ashamed, not broken, furious. Dad leaned forward first, jaw tight. "You have no idea what you've done." My throat went dry, but I forced a bitter laugh. "I think I do." Mom's face twisted. "We weren't trying to kill you. Don't be ridiculous." "Oh, great," I said coldly. "That makes it fine then." "It was just supposed to be a small accident," Dad snapped. "A broken bone. Something that heals. One payout could have changed everything." For who I spat. For me or for her, Mom's voice cracked. "For all of us. You'd have money for college. Samantha could start her life. We could finally breathe." My chest turned to ice. "So my life is worth a deposit. A wedding dress. A nursery crib. Dad's eyes darkened. "You're ungrateful. We did this for you too. You'd never make money on your own. This was your chance." The words landed like a knife, and something inside me snapped. I leaned forward, steady as stone. "You weren't doing it for me. You were willing to gamble with my bones because she mattered more. She's always mattered more. And now you've lost both of us." For a flicker of a second, Samantha's face appeared in the corner of the screen. She must have been there listening. Her eyes were wide, horrified, glistening. "Is it true?" she whispered. Mom tried to cut her off. "Sweetheart, don't listen." But Samantha's hand covered her mouth, trembling. Then the screen went dark. Aunt Margaret had slammed the laptop shut. Silence filled the kitchen thicker than smoke. My hands shook so violently I had to grip the edge of the table. But through the shaking, something else bloomed relief. For the first time in months, the weight shifted. The climax wasn't screaming or chaos. It was that silence. It was the look on Samantha's face, the crack in their lies, the undeniable truth echoing in the dark. I had pulled the rug out from under them, and they didn't even see it coming. The trial didn't drag on the way I feared. The footage was undeniable. My parents' voices filled the courtroom, cold and calculating, while the jury sat stiff-backed. Richard and Elaine Cole, my mother and father, were convicted of reckless endangerment, child cruelty, and conspiracy to commit fraud. 4 years in prison. Restitution payments, too, not millions like they dreamed of, just enough to hurt. They had to sell the family home. The irony wasn't lost on me. They wanted my broken bones to buy Samantha a future. Instead, their conviction paid for mine. Tuition rent the chance to breathe. I saw Samantha only once more outside the courthouse. She looked pale, her hand cradling her newborn. Tyler hovered behind her eyes, darting anywhere but mine. Samantha met my gaze, her voice cracking. "I didn't know. I swear, Maddie, I didn't." I nodded. "I believe you, but believing doesn't fix it." She bit her lip, tears spilling, then turned away. For the first time in her life, she walked alone. I moved in with Aunt Margaret until college started. Her house smelled of peppermint tea and laundry detergent, a mix that felt more like home than my parents' place ever had. Nights were still restless, though. I'd wake at 3 a.m., heart-pounding ears straining for phantom sounds, screeching brakes, Dad's whistle in the garage, Mom's whisper, just enough. But morning always came, and with it the reminder that I was free. When move-in day arrived, I hauled my boxes into a dorm room no bigger than a closet. The paint was chipped, the mattress thin, but it was mine. For the first time, every inch of space belonged only to me. That night, I sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by half-unpacked bags. Outside, students laughed, music thumped, life moved forward. I touched the scar on my knee from the roundabout crash. It burned faintly like a reminder carved into skin. Then my phone buzzed. A package waiting at the front desk. I frowned. I hadn't ordered anything. Inside the cardboard box was a set of brand-new bike brakes, shiny, untouched. No sender name, no note, except for a slip of paper at the bottom, blank, perfectly white. I stared at it until my hands trembled. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe someone was trying to be kind. But deep down, I knew better. Revenge doesn't end with a sentence. It lingers. It waits. And sometimes it arrives in a box with no return address. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, then you understand the weight of silence, the sting of being invisible until someone needs your pain. Stories like mine aren't just about betrayal, they're warnings, echoes for anyone who's been forced to choose between survival and loyalty. So if you've ever sat at a dinner table feeling like the ghost of your own life, hit subscribe. Leave a comment because I want to hear your story too. This isn't just my fight. And trust me, this story isn't over.